Okay, so today is food hack day. I have a recipe for coconut cream poke cake, and we're going to change the way that we make this. When we made it before, and we made this multiple times, and it's fabulous. First time I made it, the coconut cream part was a little bit more like a custard, so I'm going to try to cook it right today. It still tasted fantastic, it just wasn't the right consistency for what you want in a poke cake. So anyway, the way that it expects you to make it is in something like this. An 8x8. This I think is an 8x8. Anyway, this is in centimeters, of course, because metric. But I think this is actually 8x8 as opposed to a 9x9. The original recipe called for a 9x9. The problem I have with it is that it's so much cake. And when you want to cut a piece, you end up wanting to cut like a teeny tiny piece. So what I'm going to try today, and we'll see if it works. Again, food hacks. We're going to do it in a regular baking pan instead. So it's going to be more like a sheet cake. And we're going to see how it works. More than likely what's going to end up happening is, and this is all theoretical and we'll find out together if I fail or not. The idea would be that you end up with a cake layer, and then you end up with a kind of a cream layer, and then you end up with the whipped cream topping that goes on top of that. So it's like a 3-layer kind of thing. And then you end up with, you can cut yourself a piece that then is only this much cake. So it's not quite as like cakey. My kids aren't necessarily huge cake lovers, and so anyway, maybe this will be more of the kind of layout that we want. Anyway, this is a long and involved process, so we'll get started right away. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to take the oven to 325. And we need to grease this guy, which we'll do in a second. But what we need to do is we need to put everything together basically in one group. And we have 3 things we have to make. We have to make the actual cake part, and then we have to make the cream part, and then we have to make the topping part. So I'm going to have to wash this thing a lot today. But that's part of the fun, I guess, right? Okay, so first of all, we need 2.5 cups of almond flour. And again, I'm using, and this is the kind of almond flour that I've liked the best. It's Welby's Super Fine, and I like it because a lot of the other ones, like I tried some of Bob's Red Mill and some of those, they're fine, they taste fine, but this is, well, when I say fine, I mean, this is super finely ground, so it's really, really good for this kind of thing. It works really well in terms of consistency. You don't have as much clumping and yada yada yada. So this has just been by far my favorite kind of almond flour. So I will be buying it again and again. And no, I don't have paid sponsorships, although if they want to ship me free product, that's fine. We also need to get a cup of shredded coconut. Obviously, if it's a coconut cake, you would expect to see some coconut in here. We're going to have it in here and then also in some of the topping. So we're going to put a cup. I'm going to dump this all over the counter. Cup of shredded coconut. And I love the smell of coconut. Okay, so there's our cup of coconut. And then we want the sweetener. And I'm almost out of my swerve, so we're going to probably have to use some sucralose in there, which is of course I have the generic Splenda here. But they want 3/4 cup of the swerve. The swerve is nice for, it's also super fine. This is the confectioner's flavor. And actually, because I have to use some of this in other things, I'm going to go ahead and use this in the coconut cream and in the topping instead, because I want that consistency, because that's not going to bake. I want to use this for where I need that mouthfeel. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Splenda Light for the baking piece. So I'm going to go ahead and do 3/4 of a cup. That. And then 1/3 of a cup of unflavored, this is unflavored whey protein. That's important in something like this. You don't want to use flavored stuff because it would kill you. And it's funny because these are actually 1/3 of a cup. The little measuring cups that they give you, they're 1/3 of a cup. So it works just fine. Okay, we have a tablespoon of baking powder. tablespoon of baking powder. And, oops, about put that in the wrong place. And then we need to get a quarter teaspoon of salt. What's this? Quarter teaspoon. I still haven't refilled my salt container, so this is going to be more fun than it needs to be. Okay. Quarter teaspoon of salt. Now, the coconut oil, you need to get a half a cup of coconut oil. And this stuff is kind of crazy because it's kind of solid when it gets into the cooler temperatures. So right now in my house it's like, I don't know, 70 some degrees. And it's slightly melty. In the summer this is almost completely liquid. And in the winter it's completely solid. So the melting point must be at like 70 degrees or something. So anyway, that's kind of a crazy little deal. But they want melted. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to take this, and it's not melted, but I like a little bit more oil in my stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and just dump it in here. I'm going to consider that close enough to melting. Again, I'm not a pro. And I don't care that much. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and mix this stuff up a little bit. And while we're kind of whisking that stuff together, getting that all going, we're going to go ahead and, that's nice and mixed. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and separate out our eggs, because we need to get 5 large egg whites. And we did this the other day. In this case, what I'm going to do is, because I don't really use the yolks, I'm going to go ahead and save them, because I'm going to make some custard with them later. And custard, of course, is another fabulous dessert. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and put the whites in. We're going to do the same separation trick where you just kind of dump the yolks back and forth. Got a little violent there. Okay, this one's going to be extra fun. Let's just go ahead and do that guy. Alright. Whoa, hello. Alright, so when that happens, just pick it up with your fingers and let the white kind of go through your fingers like that. And then separate it out. Like I said, not a pro. Okay, so anyway, yeah, this cake is it's really good as far as the flavors and whatnot that you get out of it. Obviously very coconutty, but it's also got a lot of kind of nuttier, like a deeper, richer flavor than a lot of other stuff, because it does have that almond flour in there. I really do think that adds a lot to it. I'm just a huge fan of nut flours. I like coconut flour, although I have to say that I like almond flour better. So there's our 5 egg whites. Alright, and we're going to need 1 other egg, so that's why I'm just throwing that stuff in there. So our egg whites go in the mix here, along with the other dry ingredients, and then we need to add, looks like a cup of the unsweetened coconut or almond milk, and I'm using almond milk because I don't want to keep separate coconut milk too. You can, I mean, I've made it with both, and it's fine either way. It just, because I'm, cheap, I don't necessarily want to stock both different flavors, and almond milk I find to be a little bit more universally used. So I generally just get the almond milk. And I normally get it from either Sam's or, normally Sam's. So we're going to do a cup of almond milk. And again, because I have to do the dishes, I like to use the same things over and over again. Okay, so that's the cup of almond milk. And then we need to get a teaspoon of vanilla extract. So we'll do that. Teaspoon of vanilla. This is almost empty. A little bit extra didn't hurt anybody. Alright. Hey, we're at the right temp. So now we're going to go ahead and mix this up. Start it out a little bit slow. Let that go for a second. Okay, so while that's going, we're going to go ahead and grease this guy up. Hopefully the oil spreads a little bit better today. This is just not happy. Alright. We're going to do this the old school way, since that doesn't look nice. Looks like I'm preparing a cast iron skillet, I guess. Seasoning a cast iron skillet. We'll just grease it up like this. It's probably cheaper this way. Okay, so there we go. That's nice and greased. That looks pretty good. Alright, so we got all our stuff in there. Egg whites, nut milk, vanilla extract, well combined, spread batter, and prepared baking pan. Okay, let's go ahead and flip it up a little bit more. And that smells good. Alright, you have to trust me, obviously. Okay, so I think I have a bad battery in that camera. So we'll swap it out with this new one and see if I can actually get it to go longer than however long that was without dying. So, gonna keep spreading this out. Obviously we want to get it fairly even. And with the baking powder and whatnot, you're going to get a little bit of rise, but I do find that a lot of this stuff doesn't rise as much as you would expect from like a regular kind of a thing. It doesn't necessarily have exactly the same properties or whatever as far as expansion and all that kind of stuff. My wife is the one with the food science degree, so she can probably talk about it, but she's not here because she's teaching 4th graders. So doing something far more useful than hacking around in the kitchen. So anyway, so there we go. Now we're gonna do this. Tastes pretty good. All right, let's do 30 to 35 minutes. And come back and check on it, see where we're at. Thanks for watching. Be back in a few. Okay, so now's the time for the cream part, and that's the part that I managed to screw up a lot. So we're going to hope I don't screw it up too much. Again, this is not, even when you screw it up, it still tastes great, so, it's a win, but I'll try to not fail as much. So, anyway, what do we need? We need the coconut milk, and you'll notice this is not coconut milk. This is, it's not canned, it's not coconut, and it is milk, so that's close enough for me. Again, I prefer to just make it cheap rather than buying everything that's on the actual recipe, and I think I learned that from my mother. But hey, it works, so win-win. Alright, so now I need a 1/4 cup of the sweetener, and this is where I'm going to go ahead and try to use, if I've got enough swerve. I want to use a swerve in this and in the topping. So we'll see how much we have in here. If we have more than a 1/4 cup, then that's great. If we don't, then I may end up just leaving this for the actual topping itself, because you want the topping to be super smooth. Looks like we may have enough to do both. So let's go ahead and... Yep, that looks good. So we'll go ahead and do that. So we're going to put this in. You'll notice it's got that whole... It's powdered sugar, basically. It's just made from... This stuff is erythritol. So basically it's just powdered erythritol. And erythritol is one that I actually really like. as far as the general feel of it and whatnot. So basically the idea here, we want to go to medium heat, which I hate when they use unspecific, non-specific, whatever the word is. It doesn't say make it 4, but I guess medium would be halfway up. So let's pretend like that's close enough. So we're going to do that. We're going to let it sit there until it simmers a bit. When we start seeing it going, probably bubbling a little bit, we're okay. And then we need to go ahead and whisk the egg and egg yolk. And then we want to do this, mix stuff in and all this kind of stuff. So we're going to do this by hand. We're not going to do it in the KitchenAid. We'll do the KitchenAid for the whip with the whip topping. So what we need to do here is we need to get the egg, and our final egg, and then our egg yolk. So that's why I took the other eggs out, and we're saving it for the custard later. So this is just one of the egg yolks that we used, and I think that means, yeah, we have 4 yolks left over, so we can make some custard out of that. But we need a whole egg to add to the 1 egg yolk, because this is the yolky part, I guess. So we're going to go ahead and combine those together. Whisk those together, and you could, I guess, do it in the KitchenAid, but I don't want to wash it 3 times, so I'm just gonna let it rest for a second. So we're gonna go ahead and whisk this stuff together, and hope that stuff gets warm here pretty quick. Basically, the goal, obviously, here is just to make sure that it's not, you don't have too many gloppy bits. I'm going to go ahead and stir this up too. Make sure that we've got everything going here. Get that sugar roll. The downside is when you do this, you can't really tell when you're smelling what, because obviously everything smells like coconut. So I guess that's more of an almondy flavor, so I guess the smell that I'm smelling is coconut from the oven. So anyway, we want to get this hot. It's still not quite warm enough yet. But the idea is we want to get this warmed, and then we're going to mix this in with the egg yolks. So we're going to wait on it just a second. Okay, so it's definitely getting warm. You can see the steam rising. So the idea here is we're going to just put a little bit of this into here, into the eggs. And technical, there's some kind of a reason you do this. Keeps it from curdling or something. Nah, that doesn't make any sense because milk curdles. Anyway, basically the idea here is that you want to just you want to get this egg stuff warmed a little bit, and then actually maybe you should watch Alton Brown. I think he would tell you why this is good. But it makes the eggs like thicken a bit without it being just like totally shock or whatever. It doesn't make the eggs clumpy and whatever. So it's nice and smooth, kind of evens everything out a little bit. And so then once you get it to a point where the consistency, you don't see any of the like clear bits, and it looks consistent in terms of smoothness and coloration. At that point then you want to go ahead and mix it back into, at that point you dump this into that short course. So we're going to dump this back in here. Get all of our crap out of there. And you want to go ahead and keep that stuff mixing up. I'm going to get my spatula here and get all that eggy goodness in there. Everybody in my family will disagree because they hate eggs, but except Johnny. Johnny likes eggs. He's like me. Alright, so we go ahead and cook this for another 4 to 5 minutes. And I'm going to stand here and do this for a long time. But I'm pretty sure you don't want to watch me do this for 4 or 5 minutes. So we're going to come back in a second, and once this looks about right, I'll bring you back then. Okay, so it's nice and thickened at this point. We've got, it looks like kind of almost chunky. So at this point we want to take it off the burner, and we want to go ahead and put in the extra bits. So we're going to go ahead and put in the 1/4 teaspoon of coconut extract and 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Okay, coconut and vanilla. And perfect. I just ran out of my vanilla. Okay, so that's that. The other thing we have to do is we have to put in xanthan gum, and this is used as a thickening agent. So you put in an eighth of a teaspoon, so it's not very much at all. It's kind of hard to measure this stuff because it's, you know, I don't really have an eighth of a teaspoon, so I just kind of guess. And that looks about right. So, and you don't really use a lot of xanthan. I mean, you can buy a package of it and you just use it forever because you don't really go through it very fast at all. So anyway, once you got that going, you want to mix everything together real good. And make sure that you got it all whisked in. And this is almost going to smell like a custard. That really is kind of more like what it smells like. But it definitely doesn't taste like a custard when you eat it. So anyway, we're going to end up pouring this right over the top of the cake, and we'll do that in just a second. Once we get all this, once we get the cake out and this all good to go, we'll come back and I'll show you kind of what I'm going to try with this new cake recipe. We'll see if it works. Okay, we just dinged. We're at 30 minutes. Let's check this guy out and see how we look. Alrighty. It's fairly solid. Let's check and see how we are as far as doneness. It's one of the beauties of doing it like this is you end up with a little bit more surface area, so it tends to cook through faster. And sure enough, even in the deepest part here, we're cooked all the way through. So we're good to go. We're just going to let this guy sit and cool, and once he's fully cooled, and again, more surface area is going to help with that, I'm going to put it on an actual cooling sheet here. And this will get us a lot of contact with something that will drain heat. So we're going to do this, and that'll suck a lot of the heat into here without it just having to float to the room. So anyway, and I'm sure somebody will say something nasty about that in the comments as well. But hey, that's what makes it fun, right? So anyway, we're going to let that sit, and once that gets cooled, we're going to put our topping right inside of there. So, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. So see you in a few. So this is where the poke cake part comes in. We got this cake and it's cooled pretty much all the way. They suggest that you use skewers to poke your cake with, and that's fine. Personally, like in this case specifically, I don't need it to be vertical, but I need a lot of pokes. So I'm going to do something more like this. I'm going to poke the cake with some tongs. Two for the price of one, right? The idea here is we just want this mix to end up being able to get down into the cake. And I think that in this case, obviously, we'll get a lot more cake to get it into. So, and as you can see, it's bubbling on me. So what we're going to do then is take this stuff that's kind of custardy and whatever, and this is more like what happened the first time I made it. So not really sure what the difference is between the different times, but this is definitely more custardy. It's thicker. I'm not exactly sure why. Don't know. At any rate, once it's good, we go ahead and make sure that we've got it, you know, as even as possible in terms of texture, and then we just pour it over the top of the cake. And then we spread it around. And the goal is, obviously, for it to kind of go down into the cake, into the holes we just poked. And it's kind of like, if you've ever melted butter, that's kind of the texture that I have here. And like I said, the last time I made it, when it was still like a poke cake and an 8x8 was the size I made it. It did not turn out like this. When the first time I made it, I've only made this will be my third time making this, fourth time. Anyway, whatever. One of the times I made it, it was almost like a syrup. So this is definitely more of that custardy kind of texture that I experienced the first time. But like I said, it tastes good, so it's a win in my mind. So I'm just going to spread this around, kind of get it even as possible. And you'll notice that I'm kind of pushing down a little bit because I want to kind of push it into the holes that we created. Because that's kind of the goal of this, is to get it to go down inside the cake. So you end up with that kind of cool texture. There we go. So that's the cream part. That's the cream topping bit. I guess I'll just have to lick that off. Okay, so that's that part. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set that aside for a second, and we're going to go ahead and make the next bit, which is we need 1 cup of whipping cream, and this is for the actual topping. So we're going to do 1 cup of whipping cream. And then we want 3 tablespoons of swerve, if we can get it. So like I said, I'm almost out of my swerve. And this is, again, this is powdered erythritol, so I guess if you did it in it's 1, 2, 2 1/3 maybe. So I'm going to add a little bit of Splenda in here. There we go. I really like this stuff. It's good. That confectioner sugar texture is really nice for like making sure that something like this is still going to whip up really fine. Okay, then we need a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract, which we all know that 1/2 teaspoon is about that much. And then 1/3 cup of shredded coconut. And what we're going to do with the coconut, this is a little bit more interesting, makes for a little bit more interesting flavor. We're going to go ahead and slap this on here. We're going to put it, I don't know, maybe 5-ish. And we're going to go ahead and do a third of a cup. And all you got to do in this case is just slap it right in a non-stick skillet. Just pour it on there. And then we'll let it go. I want to obviously make sure that you got it spread out. And just let it sit for a second. And after a few minutes, it's going to go ahead and brown up real nice, and we can go ahead and get that going while we're whipping up the mixture here. So slap this in here. Start it out nice and slow. Okay, I get a little impatient. Let it sit like that for just a second. Clean up a little bit. Now once it gets going a little bit, it starts to thicken up fast enough that you can almost turn it up. I just did it a little bit too fast because I'm impatient. I don't know if you know that about me, but I'm very impatient. Spread this around a little bit. Just make sure you don't want to let it cook too long because it will burn fairly quickly, so you want to watch that. There we go. That is some whipped cream right there. Nice and stiff. Alright. Good stuff. Alright, so once you've got it, to about here, that's nice and stiff. You can see, I mean, it's not going anywhere. I mean, it's super, super stiff. This is the kind of texture you want, and all you're going to do is then turn around and spread that on top of the cake. I can't do that right now because the cake is still too hot. So I'm going to come back and show you the finished version once the cake's cooled, but that's going to be in a few hours. So I'm going to let it cool here, obviously, for another little while because we still have that hot topping on there, and then I'm going to stick it in the refrigerator. But it's going to take a little bit. And the brown coconut, we'll go ahead and keep moving on this guy because I can show you what that looks like. But the idea again here is you're just looking to toast it a little bit. When you start smelling it, really, a lot of that flavor is going to be released. But I like it just at least looking brown. At least a little bit, but you also have to keep an eye on this. Same with the whipped cream. I mean, I almost let that go too far, and I almost had butter to put on top of my cake, which is never a good time. I mean, butter's a good time, but not on cake. Unless it's a pancake, then it's okay. Anyway, so this is the roasted, sorry, I'm just roasting the coconut here, toasting the coconut, whatever word you want to use. And it's starting to get there, so we're probably another, I'd say 30 seconds to a minute out. But yeah, this cake, like I said before, this is a little bit thick, a little bit thicker than I like for that cream part. Like I said, I made it the first time I made it, it ended up like this. The second time I made it, it ended up not being like this at all. And I'm pretty sure the third time I made it, I think I made it 3 times. But anyway, same kind of thing. I didn't have the thickening problem, so I'm really not sure exactly what it is. It could be that I need to wait and just immediately cook it, like right before I finish the cake, before the cake is. No, I guess that would mean I need to leave the cake cooling, and then Yeah, let the cake cool all the way and then cook it from scratch at that point rather than just starting on the topping immediately. So I think maybe that's the trick. Okay, so at this point we've got it toasted. And you can see that just waiting that little bit extra time, and I don't know, maybe I was right, 30 seconds. You've got that nice light brown texture. It's not a texture, light brown's not a texture, it's a color. Light brown color, and anyway, it makes it taste really, really, really good. So, I'm a huge fan of the toasted coconut bit. But like I said, we gotta wait to put this on until after the cake is cooled all the way, because otherwise it just smears really bad and we don't want that. So, we're gonna go ahead and kill that, let that sit for just a second, and we'll put this in the refrigerator along with this, and we'll come back when it's totally assembled. Okay, so we've got our cake nice and cooled. We've got our topping also nice and cooled. So now the last thing to do is just spread this guy, spread all this whipped topping all over this cake here, and we'll try it. Because you gotta try it, I guess. I mean, if I'm forced to. Alright. So it looks like I probably, if I'm going to do it in a sheet cake, I'm going to go ahead and make probably double the amount of frosting. And by frosting, I mean this whipped topping, because this is again designed for an 8x8. So this is way more surface area for the topping. So it's definitely not as thick as I would like. So I would make this, yeah, definitely want about double the frosting, or the whipped topping here. Matter of fact, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and mix up another batch of this, but I'll set this off into the corner so I can cut a piece, and then I'll show you kind of what it looks like, and we can talk about flavors and stuff. So yes, I will finish this off with some other bits in a minute, but we'll go ahead and cut this out. See if this plays nice. It's definitely a little sticky. Yeah. My oil did not work. Let's try an actual spatula. Alrighty. So there we go. Definitely is, you can see the texture of the cake. It's really light and fluffy. I'm gonna eat with my hand like a barbarian. I'll eat with a fork. Texture-wise, you can see the coconut all throughout there. Tastes delicious. I'm a little disappointed that it didn't hold up a little bit better on the bottom. Flavors are fabulous. This is as good as the last time I made it. And I do like, I mean, I'm a sucker for whipped cream. I don't know. The issue here is not that this is too thin, because you really don't want that much more whipped cream like on this, but obviously like trying to spread it, you can't cover this whole thing with enough whipped cream to make it work. But you can also see like that kind of that middle layer of that cream bit really is not even hardly there. You can't even hardly see it. It's a little bit more on the edges. You can see there's like a little bit, this little chunk right here is that kind of creamy, custardy kind of thing. But really, you can't tell. I'll just eat this piece directly. Yeah. It does have a little bit of that coconut custard kind of flavor, like if you were to make a coconut custard pie. It's almost a coconut custard cake, which I love coconut and I love custard, so this is perfect for me. I'm glad that Sarah told me that I should make this today, because it's really good. That's fantastic. Anyway, like I said, so modification wise, what would I do? Probably cook the cake a little bit longer, because I do think that if it was a little bit longer, it would be, it would have solidified a little bit more on the bottom maybe. I mean, in some ways I almost think it needed to be, not burned, but just cooked more. It's not doughy by any stretch, but it just isn't as firmed up and consistent as I would like. I also do think that I should not make the topping, this cream part, until after the cake is cooled, so that it's hot. You immediately put it on the cake, because I think that it has a tendency to congeal if you let it sit for any period of time. So that was a failure on my part. And then also, like I said, if I'm going to make it into a cake like this with a sheet pan style, where you want to get a whole lot of different pieces, I definitely would do more whipped topping. You definitely have to do that, because otherwise you don't get enough spread of the whipped topping. So those are the changes I would make for next time. And until next time, okay, I'll see you later. Okay, so after fixing up the extra whipped cream and whatnot, I realized that I had forgotten also, failure number 4, to put on the actual shredded coconut. So that's what it looks like with shredded coconut on it. Because, I mean, I didn't shred it just for my health. So that's actually what it's supposed to look like. I mean, obviously, it's not supposed to look like this at all, but that's the way that this version of this is supposed to look. Just pretend like there's an extra piece there. Anyway, that's the end. I'm done with this. We'll try it again another day, and we'll see if I can make it better. Have a good one.